Essential question 3 is how did the economic development of the Gilded Age affect American freedom? So we've already discussed the divide between the poor working class and wealthy industrialists. And this divide between the poor working class and wealthy industrialists really contradicted traditional visions of American equality. And there's a few concepts or ideas that I want to talk about here. And the first one is what's called social Darwinism. And social Darwinism was popular among wealthy businessmen. Social Darwinism was the belief that individuals and groups were subject to the same Darwinian laws of natural selection as plants and animals in the system of evolution. In other words, it's saying that if you're not successful in business, then there's something wrong with you. You're lazy, or you're stupid, or you're somehow unable, and that only the fittest will survive in the business world to become successful. That there's some sort of evolutionary root behind that. So this is used, this idea of social Darwinism is used by robber barons to justify their business practices, like monopolies and cutthroat competition, and it also is used to justify their great success and enormous wealth. The idea also held that industrial and urban problems were part of a kind of natural evolutionary process that humans couldn't control. Hence, the laissez-faire policies and the lack of government social programs to help the poor. Similarly, the idea of the self-made man was also a very popular idea, and Carnegie was a real example of this because Carnegie was a poor immigrant who rose to be one of the wealthiest men in America. But you also had fictional examples of this idea of the self-made man, and a lot of those come from, or were at least popularized by novels by a writer named Horatio Alger Jr. And these were rags to riches stories where someone poor through sort of pluck and luck were able to rise up in the industrial world and industrial America to become successful and wealthy. And although they are fictional examples, they hold out hope to their readers that you could be this rags to riches story, just like the characters in Horatio Alger Jr.'s novels, and just like perhaps even Andrew Carnegie. In regards to unions, labor or union demands for higher wages or an 8-hour workday or something like that were seen as threatening to liberty or threatening to freedom. And the argument here is that intervention into the economy was an overreach of government power, according to that idea of social Darwinism, who sees a wealth gap, sees poverty as urban poverty as a kind of natural result of the industrial economy. It's sort of a natural thing that shouldn't be or can't be controlled by government, and for the government to even try would be an overreach of government power. Another idea I want to talk about very quickly is an idea called the gospel of wealth. And the gospel of wealth was promoted by, again, our industrialist example, Andrew Carnegie. And the gospel of wealth was the belief that as the guardians of society's wealth, the rich have a duty to serve society. And the way that Carnegie took that to heart and served society with his great wealth was that he donated over $350 million to support libraries, schools, the arts, etc., all over the country. And other robber barons or captains of industry, or at least some, did the same thing, because this idea that it also helped to kind of it also helped to kind of assuage the concerns of a lack of a social safety net. So the government doesn't need to step in to help the poor because the rich will help the poor. That was the idea, or at least part of the idea behind it. One last thing to mention here about that relationship between wealthy business industrialists and the poor working class is that the Supreme Court during this period tended in their decisions to side with business rather than labor. So their decisions tended to agree that government regulation of the economy was an overreach and a threat to liberty, and therefore they tended to decide in favor of businesses rather than deciding in the interest of the poor working class or labor unions. So we have essentially a government that is very supportive of business, very supportive of industrialization, very supportive of laissez-faire policies, and is, to a certain degree, and we'll see this even more as we move on, openly hostile to the poor, hostile to the working class, hostile certainly to labor unions and their attempts to organize, strike, and gain more rights for the poor working class.